In the beginning, there is only the trembling awareness that being itself is inexplicable. The mind, quietly awakened in the stillness of a sleepless night, discovers a truth too heavy for the daylight. Existence does not ask to be justified. Beneath all striving, beneath every plan and every hope, there is only the bare fact of consciousness, a gaze that finds itself in a world not of its choosing. Here, before desire, before the first anxious thought, there is only the silent astonishment of being. It is in this silence that the mind recoils, searching for comfort in meaning. The human animal, frail and fevered, invents stories to shield itself from the formless dread, the gnawing sense that nothingness sits beside us, patient as a shadow. We learn, early and often, to cover this absence with purpose, to make of suffering a lesson, of life a journey, of death a door. But these are only gentle veils, woven to hush the primal terror that meaning is not given, but endlessly manufactured. The world remains indifferent, untouched by our longing for justice, our cries for mercy, our desperate wish that all this pain should point somewhere. Each morning, the body wakes into the same narrow space between memory and expectation. The mind, already burdened, sets to work shaping the hours into narrative, knitting together the frayed edges of yesterday with the trembling hope of tomorrow. There is no rest in this. We are taught to pursue, to strive, to overcome as if life were a staircase and fulfillment the prize at its summit. Yet, at every step, the horizon recedes. Every achievement is shadowed by the next craving, the next hollow absence. Fulfillment, glimpsed, dissolves. Contentment is always deferred, a ghostly promise whispered from a distance that cannot be crossed. To live is to be haunted by lack. The will, restless and insatiable, seizes on objects love, wealth, knowledge, acclaim as if their possession could quiet the ache. But each acquisition leaves the soul emptier than before. For the hunger is not for things, but for cessation of wanting. The world feeds the illusion of satisfaction, parading before us images of happiness, fulfillment, belonging. Yet these are only reflections, shimmering and out of reach, more vivid in their absence than in their possession. In this theater of endless pursuit, suffering is not an exception, but the ground upon which all experience is built. To be conscious is to be wounded by the world's resistance. Pain is not the mark of failure, but the necessary condition of being. Even pleasure, that rare and fleeting visitor, exists only by contrast to the pain it relieves. Each joy carries within it the seed of its own decay, each embrace haunted by the certainty of loss. The will that clings to pleasure only deepens its suffering, for nothing in this world can last. Modernity, in its restless ingenuity, promises escape. The market swells with remedies, distractions, and aesthetics for the mind. We are sold the illusion that suffering can be managed, that enough progress, enough consumption, enough self-improvement will finally deliver us from our own restlessness. Yet the more we chase, the more frantic the pace becomes. The world grows louder, brighter, more crowded, and yet more empty. Loneliness multiplies in the very midst of connection. Despair blooms beneath the surface of affluence. We do not suffer because we are broken. We suffer because we are alive. There is no cure for this condition. All that is required is to see clearly. The endless search for meaning is itself the source of our torment. The mind that hungers for justification is forever starved. In seeking answers, we weave only more intricate nets of confusion, binding ourselves ever tighter to the wheel of craving and disappointment. Let the mind grow quiet. In the hush that follows the collapse of illusion, something ancient awakens. The soul, stripped of story, gazes into the silent abyss and does not recoil. It sees the world as it is, transient, indifferent, radiant in its own futility. Beauty remains, not as a promise, but as a tremor in the void, a fleeting shimmer on the surface of suffering. The cherry blossom, blooming for no reason, sheds its petals on the uncaring earth. The rain falls with equal indifference on the grave and the cradle. There is a strange peace in this. The will, exhausted by its own striving, lets go. No longer obsessed with becoming, it settles into the stillness of being. The horizon fades, the need to justify oneself dissolves. Suffering persists, but without resistance it softens, becoming a quiet ache rather than a wound. The world is not redeemed, but revealed naked, fragile, sufficient. Each life, then, is a brief flare of consciousness against an endless night. We appear, we struggle, we vanish. The great wheel turns, indifferent to our hopes, our pain, our love. All we build crumbles, all we cherish is taken from us. And yet, within this vanishing, there is a clarity not found in hope. The soul that ceases to fight the world as it is, that accepts the futility of its own longing, finds a sobriety deeper than consolation. This is not happiness, but truth, the gentle gravity of acceptance, the dissolution of desire into stillness. Let sorrow speak, not as a poison, but as a guide. In each disappointment, each loss, each failure, the world strips away another layer of illusion. The ego recoils, but the spirit grows clear-eyed. Suffering is the teacher that strips the soul bare, leaving only what cannot be taken, the silent witness, the awareness that endures when all else falls away. So it is that the wise do not chase after the world, nor do they flee from it. They stand quietly at the threshold, observing the endless play of birth and decay, joy and despair. They see the futility of striving, the emptiness of accomplishment, the vanity of applause. They do not despise the world, but neither do they cling to it. Detached, they move through life, as one moves through a dream from which they have half awakened. In the depths of suffering, a strange freedom arises. When all hope of escape is abandoned, when every dream is seen through, the soul no longer seeks to be anything but what it is. The mind, having reached the end of its illusions, becomes transparent to itself. In the clear light of resignation, the world loses its terror and its charm. There is nothing left to attain, nothing left to lose. All that remains is the quiet awareness of being and the gentle sadness that such awareness brings. To speak of life as a goal is to speak from the midst of illusion. Life is not a journey with a destination, but a brief flowering in the soil of suffering. There is no reward waiting at the end, no purpose given from above. The meaning we seek is the very net that ensnares us, the veil that hides the world's indifferent beauty. When the veil falls, when the search ceases, life is neither good nor bad, but simply what it is: unspeakably strange, unfathomably sad, and, in its own mute way, complete. In this clarity, there is no call to heroism, no summons to transformation, only the quiet acknowledgement of what has always been, that to be is to suffer, to know is to mourn, to see is to surrender. The soul, divested of its illusions, stands in the ruins of its own longing, and in that ruin finds a peace that does not depend on hope. To dwell in truth is to dwell in solitude, not as a punishment, but as the natural condition of all consciousness. Even surrounded by others, we remain islands, each soul alone in the silent vastness of its own awareness. The deepest bond is the shared recognition of this solitude, a glance exchanged, a sigh in the dark, a hand held not to dispel loneliness, but to honor it. There is a dignity in this, a quiet courage in admitting that no love, no friendship, no achievement can bridge the abyss between oneself and another. Modern culture recoils from this solitude, prescribing distraction in all its forms. We are told to seek fulfillment in connection, to cure our emptiness with the noise of others. Yet the more we flee from solitude, the more frantic our despair becomes. The soul that refuses to be alone is condemned to perpetual unrest, forever searching for in others what can only be found in the stillness of its own heart. To be awake is to know the taste of sorrow. It is to look unflinching into the face of impermanence, to see that all things pass, that every love ends in loss, every joy in grief. It is to walk through life as through a graveyard, pausing at each stone to remember what was and to mourn what can never be again. Yet in this mourning there is a gentleness, a reverence for the fragility of all things. Nothing lasts, and for this very reason everything is precious. The soul that accepts impermanence does not clutch at moments, does not try to fix in place what must dissolve. It moves through life lightly, carrying its sorrow not as a burden but as a companion. Suffering remains, but it is no longer the enemy. It is the thread that binds the heart to the world, the dark undercurrent that gives beauty its depth and sweetness its ache. Ambition, that restless fever, fades in the light of this awareness. The need to prove oneself, to accomplish, to be remembered, loses its urgency. The world's applause grows hollow, its rewards insubstantial. The soul, freed from the tyranny of becoming, settles into the ordinary. The warmth of sunlight on the skin, the slow drift of clouds, the silent companionship of trees. These simple things, once overlooked, become luminous in their transience. There is no need to possess, only to witness, and in witnessing, to let go. The path of resignation is not one of despair, but of clarity. It is not a flight from suffering, but a surrender to its inevitability. In resigning oneself to the world's indifference, one ceases to be tormented by its injustices. There is no justice here, no grand design, no hidden order. The world is as it is, chaotic, brief, beautiful, and tragic. The soul that ceases to demand meaning from the world finds a strange kinship with all that suffers, a solidarity born of mutual helplessness. To be human is to be divided. The body aches for comfort, the mind for certainty, the heart for love. Yet none of these can be truly secured. Pain persists, knowledge falters, love fails. The will resists, but resistance only tightens the knot of suffering. Acceptance is not submission, but a turning toward reality, an embrace of the world's brokenness and one's own. Let the seeker rest. The road leads nowhere, the journey is already complete. All striving is the shadow of a desire that cannot be satisfied. All achievement, a footnote in the endless cycle of loss. The wise do not disdain the world, but they no longer seek salvation within it. They live as one lives in the fading light, content to watch the day's last rays vanish behind the horizon, knowing that night is not an enemy, but the silent backdrop against which all things shine. There are moments brief, unsought, when the veil lifts, and the world appears as it truly is, empty of purpose, yet full of wonder, silent, yet infinitely expressive, indifferent, yet intimate. In such moments, the soul is neither consoled nor afflicted, but suspended in a quiet amazement at the mere fact of being. This is the peace that passes understanding, not because it soothes, but because it no longer needs to. The world turns, lives flare and vanish, love appears, wounds, departs. The heart is broken and broken again, until at last it beats only in time with the world's sorrow. In this breaking, something remains. The quiet center that watches, that neither clings nor recoils, that endures without hope and without regret. This is the root of all wisdom, the silent witness that survives every loss. No voice, however eloquent, can deliver you from yourself. No philosophy can shield you from the world's indifference. The only relief is the relief of seeing, of ceasing to fight what is. This is the cold comfort of truth, that life is not to be solved, but endured. That joy is not a reward, but a brief suspension of pain. That meaning is not given, but imagined, and in its absence, a deeper peace may be found. In the end, all that is left is the quiet acceptance of limitation. The soul bows before the immensity of what cannot be known, cannot be changed, cannot be escaped. In this bowing, there is no defeat, only the dissolution of the will's fever. The world does not care, and this is its gift. Freed from the demand to matter, one is at last permitted to be. Let this truth settle like dust in the fading light. There is no secret, no hidden path, no redemption waiting at the end of suffering. There is only the slow, patient unraveling of illusion, the gradual settling into what always was. In this stillness, sorrow and joy, hope and regret, ambition and resignation all dissolve, leaving only the bare, unadorned fact of being. Life, stripped of its veils, is neither a goal to be achieved, nor a problem to be solved. It is a quiet mystery, endlessly unfolding, indifferent to the desires of those who witness it. To see this clearly is to be freed not from suffering, but from the need to make sense of it. The candle burns lower, the night deepens, the last word is not spoken, but vanishes into silence. The soul, at last, at rest. A silent witness abides within, observing the pageant of suffering, as the wind observes the sea never merging, never resisting, merely existing beside the storm. To be conscious is to be split, one half writhing in the chains of want, the other gazing, mute, upon the spectacle of its own unrest. The will creates the world's torment, and cannot flee from it, for it is both the architect and the captive, both the fever and the ash that remains. Each pleasure is a shadow caused by deprivation. In the moment of fulfillment, the mind feels only the pause between two aches. The calm before longing stirs again, and the cycle resumes. There is no rest in attainment, no home in the embrace of satisfaction. The heart, forever unsated, gnaws at its own substance, mistaking the echo of past pain for hope. In the hush that follows desire's collapse, one hears the faintest music, the soft, unyielding melody of resignation. How often the soul bargains with its sorrow, promising future relief if only this day, this hour, this small wish is granted. Yet the currency is always counterfeit. What is gained dissolves, what is grasped slips through trembling fingers. The world, impervious to pleading, reveals itself as a mirror in which one sees not salvation, but the weary face of longing's return. To demand happiness from existence is to ask for warmth from a stone, for sympathy from the tide. The spectacle of life, its dramas, its ambitions, its loves and hatreds, is a procession of masks. Beneath every motive, behind every triumph and disgrace, there waits the single unchanging fact. All striving is vain, for time devours the victors and the vanquished alike. The applause fades, the monuments crumble, the name spoken with reverence today is forgotten by the morning of another age. What remains is not legacy, but the shadow of a wish that could never be fulfilled. The wise do not escape pain, nor do they anesthetize the mind with promise. Instead, they let the river of suffering flow through them, neither damming it nor clinging to its eddies. They see the futility of possession, the emptiness of ambition, the transience of all that can be named or held. In detachment, they do not grow cold, they see more clearly, for the fog of wanting no longer blurs the shapes of things. Illusion is the veil the will draws over its own eyes, the fog that makes every disappointment feel unique, every loss unbearable, every pleasure a prophecy. But when the veil thins, when the fog recedes, the world stands revealed as it is, not cruel, not generous, but indifferent, and therefore paradoxically peaceful in its refusal to justify itself. Here, the soul finds not the light, but clarity, not consolation, but the quieting of the old, inarticulate ache. Detachment is not withdrawal, nor is it disdain. It is the softening of the grasp, the gentle untying of the knot that binds being to desire. The world continues in its agony and its beauty, but the soul is no longer thrown from wave to wave, no longer convinced that salvation lies just beyond the next horizon. The face of a stranger, the flight of a bird, the touch of rain upon skin, these become enough, not because they satisfy, but because they are seen at last for what they are. Moments in the endless unraveling, fragments of light against the immensity of night. In suffering, all illusions are ground to dust. The self, so carefully assembled, is scattered by the winds of disappointment. What remains is the bare, silent witness, stripped of pride and pretense, seeing at last that there was never anything to possess, never any ground on which to stand. Here, resignation is not defeat, but the first and final act of lucidity. It is the return to what is most ancient in us, the surrender not to fate, but to the truth that all things pass and nothing belongs to us. The candle burns lower, but its flame grows steadier. In the dark, the mind recalls that even sorrow is not forever, that every agony becomes memory, that memory itself dissolves. The wheel of becoming turns, and all things are drawn back into the silence from which they came. The wise do not flee the world, nor do they cling to it. They simply watch, unblinking, as each wave rises and falls, and let the sea reclaim what was never theirs. Night folds itself around the soul like a shroud, and the last embers of striving fall away without protest. In this hush, there is no question left to ask, for every inquiry has unraveled into silence. The self, weary from its endless pursuit, at last recognizes the futility of its yearning, and the heart, battered by hope, falls still. No future calls, no memory consoles. There is only the unlit vastness, empty of promise, full of a peace, too deep for words. The world contracts to a single breath, neither sweet nor bitter, but simply present. The ache of being does not relent, yet it no longer wounds, it pulses quietly, like the rhythm of the blood, a reminder that consciousness endures, even when desire is spent. The mind, once frantic with anticipation, yields to the stillness it once fled. There is no more need to become, only the fading awareness of what is. All things are relinquished in this twilight. The desire for justification, the hunger for certainty, the longing for love that will not die. Shadows lengthen across the field of memory, and each sorrow, each regret, each unfulfilled hope settles gently into the soil of oblivion. The soul, no longer burdened by purpose, ceases to measure, ceases to ask. It simply witnesses as the river of time carries all things away. There is no revelation, only the slow dissolution of form into formlessness. The boundaries of self dissolve into the silence from which they rose. The voice that spoke of suffering, of longing, of detachment grows faint. No triumph lingers, no defeat. There is only the vanishing, the quiet erasure of all that once seemed so urgent. Suffering becomes indistinguishable from peace, for both arise from the same source, the will that has finally fallen silent. Thus, life empties itself, not into meaning, but into stillness. The last wish drifts away like smoke, and the soul, neither consoled nor condemned, drifts with it. The candle gutters and goes out. The darkness is complete, and in it, nothing is lost, for nothing was ever truly possessed. No echo stirs in the infinite night. Only the tranquility of absence remains the faintest impression, the whisper of a presence that needs nothing, asks nothing, wants nothing. In this final breath, the self dissolves, and the world is left untouched, serene, unobserved. Suffering, illusion, detachment all merge and vanish, leaving only the silent fact of being, unclaimed and unclaimed by any will. And so the soul passes from longing into rest, as a shadow passes from dusk into midnight, never to return, never to awaken again.